With that, I am done with my part of it, and so I would like to turn this over to Eloise Castillo. Eloise?
Forgot to unmute. Thank you, Greg. Hello, everybody. My name is Eloise Castillo, like Greg mentioned, and I work for Moreno Valley Unified School District. To get started, I'm going to give a quick review of California health education for those of you that might not know or remember, or if you weren't here at our first session where we really broke this down. So these standards, the California health content standards are just like, we have our own health standards, just like any other subject. So we have the standards and what we should be teaching. So the standards are linked right here, right at the top, and they're a clear description of what students need to know and they need to be able to master at each grade level. So this document, if you haven't seen it yet, is a little bit lengthy. And if you teach high school like I do, you're gonna have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, but all the grade levels are on there and it's a great resource. And just a reminder that there has been a shift in health education. So health education used to focus on knowledge, just teaching the kids knowledge, what do they know? But now it has shifted to not only have a focus on knowledge, but also the skills so that we can develop health literate students. So teaching them skills like problem solving, and actually I have a whole slide on that. So the health literacy model right here starts with essential concepts and goes all the way up to health promotion. So you'll see that this little arrow goes up and it increases with the more skills that they're taught. So at the beginning, essential concepts, that's where it's a little bit easier. And then as we go all the way up to health promotion, that's where they're gonna have and be taught and know skills to be able to put into place. All right, so here's an example. The standards, the content standards are what? They are what we need to be teaching. And then the framework is the how. So how to teach it. If you don't know yet, the framework literally provides lessons for us to be able to just make our own. And I mean, I guess if you don't want to make them your own and just take them directly from the website, you could do that also. It really has a good layout of things that you can teach. So this example right here on your left is for grades 7 and 8. The standard is about injury prevention and safety. And it's standard 3. It breaks down the whole thing here. Then it gives you a lesson of what you can do and use in your classroom. So using in-class technology, working in pairs or small groups, students film short video vignettes on an identified safety or injury topic. Of course, now that we're all virtual, you can look at these and make them your own and see how you could make them, transfer them to being virtual, but the resources are all there. So the standard is what we have to teach and the framework is how we can go about teaching that. All right, so here's the health education content areas. So this is the all the topics that we are supposed to cover in health education. So nutrition and physical activity, growth, development, and sexual health, injury prevention and safety, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, mental, emotional, and social health, and then personal and community health. So this is the content areas that we're supposed to teach, broken down by grade level. I love this graphic. This is one that they use a ton when we're in our trainings for this, because it breaks down what you're supposed to teach by grade level and what topic, and it's just really a good resource. So today we're gonna cover right here in this red-orange looking one, nutrition and physical activity, and mental, emotional, and social health. So mental, emotional, and social health should be taught in kindergarten, 2nd and 3rd grade, 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade, so middle school and all the way through high school. Whoa. Sorry, I opened that. It is also linked, as you can see there. So a closer look at mental, emotional, and social health. All right, so to begin, we need to talk about inclusion in the classroom. It is so important that our students feel safe and supported and included in their learning environment. If we want our kids to be successful, we need them to feel safe within our classrooms. We need them to feel safe with us, and not just safe, but supported. So the way we can do that is our classrooms need to honor diversity, okay? They need to emphasize equity and foster inclusion. So all of our students need to feel included in our classroom. And this is something I really took out of my credential program, because so many students don't feel like they can relate to other kids already on their campus. So I really like in my classroom to create an environment where they feel like they are included, to feel like they aren't just a standalone student. So the health framework defines cultural identities as representative of ethnicity, religious background, home culture and experiences, primary language and home dialects of English, family composition and gender expression, among other student identities. So I know when it comes to me and even other people, right away when we think cultural identity, some of us just go straight to ethnicity. When we think culture, it goes straight to ethnicity. And it's a lot more than that. It's not just about their ethnicity. Their gender expression is very important to help them feel included. Their language. Sometimes our students that are English learners, they won't even speak in class. So sometimes we don't even know that they don't speak the language that we speak if we don't sit there and read their reports. And we just take them as shy students. So it's really important to know the culture of your classroom, to know what culture and cultural identities are defined as, so that we're not just thinking or picking up on their ethnicity. So viewing these identities as resources, valuable in their own right and useful for deep learning, is crucial in ensuring access and equity for diverse learners. Of course, we always want to reach all of our students. We want all of our students to learn. We want that equity in our classroom. So the cultural learning and understanding cultural identities is really good. In that link that Greg was just talking about with the asynchronous work, they dive really deep into this, and there's great resources on there. So when you do get that link, you might want to check that out so that you can see so much more than what we have in here about this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a video. And as you watch the video, note what is resonating with you and consider your personal experience with letting students lead with their identity.
Young people's racial and cultural identities are critically important. And we have to acknowledge that the way we have set up opportunities for learning and development are not always respectful of the diversity that we have in this country. As we are thinking about how to maximize chances that young people are thriving, it's important to let them lead with their identity. Not bury it, but lead with it. Show it off, be proud of it, actually display it, to perform it, to put it up on the stage, to put it up on the screen, to make videos about it, to write poetry about it, so they are really bringing themselves into the room. If I come into a space and I don't trust this space and I don't bring my full self into this space, the behavior that you see may not be a reflection of my competence. It's a reflection of me not being motivated to show you what I have because I don't trust this situation. If I don't have a relationship with you and I don't get to be a little bit more of who I am, you're going to slow down my learning and development by not knowing me. Schools and community organizations and families and the overall sort of environment of the community are all playing a role in shaping the experiences and contexts and relationships where learning happens. That basically is what the science of learning and development has told us, that all adults, all settings, all experiences matter. Young people.
All right. So before we get into that, going into it a little more, I wanted to tell you a little bit of how that resonated with me. With virtual learning, I wanted to find new ways to build relationships with my students, to relate to them. I was just thinking of ways that I can relate to them and still create these relationships that I would be creating in the classroom. So because I'm Hispanic and my school is about 75% Hispanic, I was like, wow, let me relate to them by talking about our Hispanic culture. We eat a lot of the same foods. We do a lot of the same things. So I was doing that and I was getting a lot of feedback in the chat. We were talking a lot and it was just great because in my district, they don't have to turn on cameras. So I don't even know what my students look like besides their profile pictures, but they communicate with me a lot in the chat. So it was great. I was like, oh, we're interacting, we're talking a lot, but I didn't think that by interacting and making all these connections with my Hispanic students, I was leaving out the 13% of the African-American students we have, the other percent, even smaller percent of the Asian students we have, and all the other cultures that are inside of my classroom. And each one of my classes isn't 100% Hispanic. So I did have a small percentage of other ethnicities, other cultures in my class. And after my students started saying, some of them would speak up, some of them wouldn't say anything. They would say things like, oh, I've never tried that. I've never heard of that. And I realized really quick that I was excluding all the students that are already a minority technically in our school because we're about 75% Hispanic. I was excluding them and making them not feel welcome in my virtual classroom because I was trying to teach to the to the majority, excuse me. And I'm not saying we need to find specific ways to teach every single student, but we need to make sure that every single student is included in what we're talking about. So I thought about how I can fix that. And in Google Classroom, I asked a question, how on our next assignment, or what did I asked their input. What should I include in this next one? Because I was doing like this or that type of assignment. So I asked them, what should I include? So I took their information and I used that and I made it more general. So I made it more like maybe things that happen in California or things that happen in the United States. So not specifically relevant to the Hispanic culture, but in general that maybe they'll have more experiences with. So that was something that that really hit me. And then especially when we came in and did this training, and I felt guilty about it because I was like, man, I really excluded them, but I didn't do it intentionally. So I had to just learn and grow from there. I hope something like that resonated with you from that video. And now let's talk about culturally and linguistically relevant response teaching. So the next couple slides are kind of lengthy in words. And I just want to share that because we felt this information was really good to keep it on the slides. And if somebody comes and looks at them again, we want them to know all of this, but I won't just read off the slides. So CLRT is research-based and it's about making meaningful connections in your classroom. Okay, so learning the school and their cultures and their languages and their experiences. So that can easily be done in Google Classroom. So I know for our school, we have to do engagement. And for my engagement, I like to just ask a question in Google Classroom. It's simple. I get to know my students and I can say I did engagement for the students even when they're absent. So that could be something as what's your favorite food? Or asking them, what in your culture do you like the most? Or just asking them little questions like that so they could feel included and that they're talking about themselves. So if we don't make connections, we can't have our students be able to access the rigorous curriculum. They're not able to learn and develop higher academic skills. They don't see the relevance in the learning because they don't feel connected. Something also that stood out to me in this video, watching it again, it says, if I don't feel included, it slows down my learning. And I'm sure even for you guys, now as an adult, if I go somewhere and I don't feel comfortable, I put up a block. I'm a pretty outgoing person, but if I don't feel comfortable, I become shy really, really fast. And I'm over 30 years old. So for me to still feel that way, I could only imagine how these students are feeling, aren't socially and emotionally mature yet. So they don't know how to handle those things and they really shut down also. So it's really important for them to feel connected because they're not going to be able to access the higher academic levels and they're not able to access the rigorous things that we want to teach them. So we spend all this time working on rigor. Our district tells us rigor, 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 and we can't access that if our kids don't feel comfortable. So with health education, there are so many opportunities to make these connections. With social and emotional learning, another connection I like to make with my students in the classroom and virtually, I like to ask them, I know that a lot of cultures, mental health is something we don't talk about in the home. So I make that connection with them. I ask them, do you guys talk about this at home? So that they don't feel like they can't talk about it, because we're all sitting in the classroom and we all grew up in a space where we weren't able to talk about it or didn't feel comfortable talking about it. Because I know I didn't feel comfortable. And my parents, I had great parents. There was nothing wrong with them, but I just wasn't comfortable talking about that. So it's so easy to relate things like this, being in health education. So background knowledge can be acknowledged as an asset to deepen the learning, include them with it, add their cultures, add their identities, ask them the questions. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, because as health teachers, that's what we do best. We know how to interact with our students. We have so many good contents that we can dive deep into, that we can get into these good conversations. We feel comfortable with that. I know other content areas aren't comfortable either talking about mental health or social and emotional health or sexual health. So we do have that already in us to deepen the connections, but just make sure to do them. Just be mindful of doing them. So I do want to read this one. For students of color, English language learners, and other underserved student populations, those assets are often overlooked and underutilized. Therefore, we often miss the chance to use them to support rigorous learning. So that speaks to me, because I overlooked an underserved population within my classroom, because there was only, maybe 7 of them, but the other 28 of them related to me. I continued to underserve those students. So just realize who you have in your classroom, recognize the population in your classroom and across the school, because it is really important. We do not want to continue underserving these students that are already being underserved and already feel that they are underserved. We do not want to add that to their plate. So the CLRT model does create equitable environments, curricula, and instructional methods that validate and reflect the diversity identities. So on the next slide, this is what is CLRT. So this is actually really good. Let me go ahead and open it up. So this is a framework for culturally responsive teaching. Okay, so it's telling you students are ready for rigorous independent learning, and then it has the breakdown of community of learners and learning environments, information processing, awareness, and learning partnerships. So I don't know why I went from the bottom back to the top, but so learning partnerships, reimagine the student and teacher relationships as a partnership. A lot of us went to school in an era where our teacher was above us. We were not equals. Don't think you're equals. And I'm not saying we're equals now, but we didn't make very many connections with teachers, because that's not the way it was back then. We want to be partners with our students. We want them to know that we are here for them. And if we do that, our students will be ready for rigor. Take responsibility to reduce students' social emotional stress from stereotype, threat, and microaggressions. This is really important, because across the school, there are so many microaggressions you hear just walking through there. They're calling each other certain names that shouldn't be called. They're using references they shouldn't be referencing. It's just so much going on. So in your classroom, if you can control that, try to control that. So know and own your own cultural lens. Okay, so back to my story again, learning my cultural lens and knowing and understanding that just because it's your culture doesn't mean it's everybody's culture in your classroom. Know it. Also, your cultural lens as who you see and how you look at other people because of their cultures. Are you willing to learn their culture? Are you willing to embrace their culture? Or is it like, oh, that's their culture. Cool. I know that that's their culture, but that's theirs. I have mine. Okay. Information processing. There was one in here. Here it is. Connect new content to culturally relevant examples and metaphors from students' community and everyday lives. If you don't live in the same community as your students, and you don't pay attention to the community around you, that can really hurt students also. I work in Moreno Valley and I live in Ontario and I grew up in Chino. So there is differences from the school I went to the school I work at. And there are some minor ones, but there are some major ones also. And I need to be aware that where their community is, where they live every day, the things they experience every day might be different than the way I experience things every day. So that's really important, and make it culturally relevant to them. Okay. Another story, my first year teaching, I think I told this story in the first session. So if you were in the first session, I'm sorry for repeating this. But my first year teaching, I was doing a assessment for nutrition, and I was having them break down the, what am I trying to say? Break down meals based on what they had in them. So grains, protein, things like that. One of the things that was on there was lasagna. And to me, I've had lasagna multiple times. So I was like, oh, lasagna. And it wasn't until multiple kids were like, Mrs. Castillo, I got that wrong because I don't even know what lasagna is. I've never had it. And there I was again, sitting there like, wow, I didn't even think of that. Their culture might be different. Their community might be different. Yes, there's an Olive Garden in their city, but it's way up by the freeway. So maybe they've never been there. I don't know, but I didn't think of that. And there I was having to adjust again. And it's okay. I apologized and I added a couple of points to the grades because I changed the grading scale is what I'm trying to say. I changed it to just completely cancel that out because it wasn't fair to the students that didn't even know what that was. And luckily someone spoke up because I would have just left it there and thought it was fine. So some things to think about. Did I do anything from here? No. Create an environment that is intellectually and socially safe for learning. Again, we're good at that. That's just what we do as health teachers. We like to embrace our students and let them know that they're safe, but just be mindful of it and make sure that we're doing it. So this is in the asynchronous. There is some more information about it. It's actually really, really good. But if you want more information on that, or you want to look through these and read them all, you can go ahead and click the link. All right, so now some more about mental and social health and emotional health. So breaking the stigma. I think this COVID time has been a really, really good time to address mental health across the nation, probably across the world. It is so good now. It's unfortunate the way we have to do it, but it is opening so many people's eyes about how important mental health is. It's really hard to be in a classroom teaching about mental health and the students aren't accepted with it at home. They don't understand it. And then the world doesn't understand it either. So it really is good that this is happening to bring light to mental health and to break the stigma around it. Okay, so make sure you define stigma. So make sure that they understand what stigma is. It is caused by 3 root problems: ignorance, prejudice, and discrimination. So ignorance, just basically not knowing; prejudice, prejudging and discriminating against against someone that that struggles with mental health. And then stigma hurts. Stigma and discrimination due to a mental illness diagnosis can take many forms. The way I think about it is my students, when they come up to me and talk to me about them having anxiety or they're depressed and no one understands them, they're just being hurt more and more. And
you had ice. Dang it.
And they don't really, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So when they come up and talk to me saying that they don't understand it or they don't know, or they're feeling a certain way and they don't know who to talk to about it because they don't have anybody at home or nobody understands it within their friends, it hurts them and it doesn't make them want to speak up. So we need to help break the stigma. Speaking against it, your thoughts, your words, and your actions matter to the people around you. Use them to promote acceptance over ignorance, compassion over discrimination. So because mental health is not something that was really talked about, I don't know, like, what was it, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even now in some families and communities, it's still not talked about. It's hard to still hear people say ignorant comments about mental illness. It's hard to hear people not caring to understand and thinking that they're above mental illness because for whatever reason, maybe they don't deal with it. So speak against it when you do hear it. It's not, especially if you have, being open with your students, if you deal with any sort of mental illness, also helps them understand it. Of course, to wherever enough where you're comfortable. You never want to put too much out there where you don't feel comfortable. But if you deal with anxiety once in a while, tell them. If you deal with or dealt with in your life and were able to overcome something like depression, you can share those kind of things if you're comfortable. You understand your students, you know your audience. But if that is something you're comfortable dealing with, that's another way to make connections where it'll help break the stigma. They'll know that someone understands, and they understand that an adult deals with it also, and they're able to continue going on and working through it. So those are just good ways to help break the stigma. Suicide prevention, there is a link to the crisis hotline right there. Schools are required to adopt a policy on suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. It requires suicide awareness and prevention training for teachers. So if you're in a district and you're a teacher, you should have had a training on this. I know specifically for my district, we've had a few trainings on it, I believe. We've had a few. Our counselors do great about showing us these things. They do a good job of sending like slides or anything that they have with information. We do suicide awareness weeks and bullying awareness weeks. And I think our school does a good job about doing these things. So hopefully yours is also. Parents, guardians, caretakers, and students should be notified twice annually about local mental health services at school and within their community. So that means even beyond the health classroom. So I know at many schools, health class is only one semester. Not every student takes health classes. Some students take it online. So this goes above just the health teacher. This goes with the school, sometimes even the districts need to provide this information. Suicide prevention hotline numbers will be printed on the back of school identification cards. I know at our school, they also hand out the little cards. So there's various ways to do this and to keep our kids informed. So it is the hope that the inclusion of these measures will help to reduce the stigma of mental health. That's really a push that we're doing with our students. I don't know if or of mental health and suicide. That's a big push with our students. I know that students are really having a hard time right now. Students are having thoughts that they may not be having if they were at school. Some students are doing better now that they're not at school because school is so high pressure for them. So there's so much going on with these students. And hopefully your schools and districts are doing what they need to do to help minimize the stigma and reduce it and show the acceptance within the school. So conditions of learning considerations for mental and social health. Again, on the asynchronous work, they dive so deep into this. It is really good how much information they give. We did want to leave all this up here for you guys for the PowerPoint, but there really is some really good resources on that asynchronous work on top of what we're already sharing. Okay, so build the knowledge and skills. So us as health teachers, it's really important if we get to be with students, whether it's virtual or in the classroom, we get to be these people for the students. If our students get health online, you know what they do? Pretend they're reading, pretend they're reading, get to the test and hope they pass. A lot of students aren't reading all this. They're not learning very much through the online formats. So if you have the opportunity to be a voice to your students and be present to your students, even if it's virtual. Be that person, build the knowledge and build the skills. You don't have to be a therapist, like it says here. You do not have to be a therapist or lead a group therapy in the classroom, but be the place where they can feel comfortable talking about it. Even if they don't want to talk about it, they can feel comfortable listening about it. Just let them feel comfortable and help them to reduce the stigma, help them build the knowledge. And maybe they don't deal with it, but maybe they'll be able to help someone that does. But some topics may be triggers. Okay, so there are things that if students have experienced trauma and or experiencing them and they have health-related challenges, some things may cause a trigger within them. So you do have to be aware of that. You can do that by knowing who is available on campus to support students who may need to talk to someone. So if you have counselors on campus, if you have social workers on campus, who is it? Make sure you're aware of who you can help if someone is triggered by something you guys are talking about. Also, in this virtual time, does your school have a plan on what to do if something does happen with your students and someone reaches out to you? Do you have a plan? Is there a plan in place? I know our plan, we do have one, thankfully. We email all of our principals, depending on what it is. We have a lot of resources to reach out to the people at our school, but we know they're busy also, but there is a plan in place. So even if you are teaching this virtually, please, please, please make sure you know your school's plan, whether it's on campus or virtual. Identify tiered supports available on campus and in your community so that you're able to ensure that they receive the help in a timely manner. Again, if you're on campus, know who it is. If you're in virtual, figure out what it is so that you can take it the step above if you need to. We all know we're mandated reporters. So if it gets to that step, is that the step you need to take? Is it not at that point yet? Do you just need to let the counselor and the administration know? Where identify your tiered support so that you can do that. And what you say matters. Be mindful of labels and terms used as well as what they communicate to students. It's really, like I said, it's so hard to know all of our students, to get every single detail about them, especially because I don't know about you guys, but we have 36 students in our classrooms. That's a lot of people times our 5 periods that we have to teach. So there are a lot of things that go into it. So if you can just be mindful about the labels and the terms you use, just to make everyone feel comfortable, and be mindful of students that may need or may request to be called by different names. There's just so much that goes into it. And if a student's willing to share that information with you, you should respect that and do that. So if a student prefers to be called by a different name, a different gender, respect that and do that. And not only will it make them feel supported, it's going to change the dynamic in your classroom, that they're able to know that you respect them enough to do that, that you care about them enough to use the different name, and they appreciate those things. So just remember that what you say does matter. All right, so here are some resources. When we share the slides with you in the speaker notes, it does give a breakdown of these resources. So of course, down here we have the National Alliance on Mental Illness, okay, and then the California one. And then the one I want to speak about is Directing Change. I don't know if you guys have done this yet or if you've seen this website, but it's actually really great for community building in your classroom. I don't know, again, how we would do it virtually yet, but this is a really great resource. So Directing Change is basically PSAs, public service announcement videos that the students make. They are great. The winners, every year they do have a competition and the students can win money. But it's really awesome to see these videos that these kids come up with. They're specifically about suicide prevention and mental health awareness. So it's really great to see the videos. If you go on their website, they do have many examples of different videos, and it's just a really great resource. Again, all of these resources are on the asynchronous work, and they're linked here. All of them are linked here. And then in the speaker notes, you will find small descriptions of each one. Instructional materials for health education. So there has been instructional materials for us that we could use, but K through 8, the instructional materials were put on hold. So that means like list of books and technology-based materials that you could have gotten are no longer available to review. But OCDE, Orange County Department of Ed, came up with a great website that includes all of these materials. And it really is a good website that has basically everything we're telling you also. So this was just launched, I think in December, right, Heidi, when we went into our training. This was just launched. They've been working on this, working really hard, but this is really great. It has all the resources here also on top of what we're going to send you. It has trending topics that are so relevant to what we're dealing with. So building relationships remotely, health education and practice, teaching sensitive topics via distance learning. That's a huge one. Vaping linked to COVID-19 risks in teens and young adults. So that is there. But even better, when you go up here to the educators, little tab, it breaks everything down by grade level. So if you are a high school teacher like I am, you would click on this. It gives you an overview, and then it breaks everything down into content areas. So let's say that I wanted to do emotional and social health. Again, an overview, but all the links of resources to help you and a little description of all of them. And there's so many on here, all of those, even more. And then it breaks down some more curriculum and lessons. And then it even gives you films and books that will help you to teach this content. Okay, so this is on the slides. It is also at californiahealtheducation.org. And it is really good. And then the partnerships, how to make partnerships with your family, your school, and your community. But what I think is really great is they really do a good job about breaking it down for grade level. So I was just searching through this and just to see what they had. And kindergarten through 3rd grade, they have the overview, all the content areas. Also the standard guides, I forgot to mention, and the skills posters that Heidi was just talking about. And the model learning activities coming soon. So the high school did have that also. I just didn't scroll that far. But when you look at it for kindergarten through 3rd grade, the curriculum and lessons are a little different. But look at the book list. It totally is different than the high school ones, which is obvious, but it's really nice to see that they did their homework to figure out which will work best for each grade level. Even further, so that's kindergarten. They broke it down to 1st grade books. That would be better for 1st graders. 3rd grade books, there's only one, but it's okay. And then classroom activities and partnerships again, but breaking it down by grade level.